It was a period of time at the university of great instability. We were changing presidents with great regularity. Not every president necessarily had a great interest in this museum. Some presidents wanted to get rid of the museum entirely. How could you take an institution that's in danger of catastrophic loss and save it if the administration of the university is not too crazy about doing it? The challenge was to get the people of Oklahoma to understand the value of the materials and to support doing something about it.
Attempting to save the collections against nearly insurmountable odds, Dr. Morris wrote a book which he named Heritage at Risk. Every page told the story of the extent and value of the collections and the marvelous history of Oklahoma as it's reflected in the collections. The publication was given away to people throughout the state. Exhausting every contact, the museum's director brought together business and educational leaders and state and local politicians to discuss the potential catastrophic loss.
This fellow named Dr. Mars called and invited Representative Carolyn Thompson, another member of the House, to come to his office to visit about a project. And Oklahoma was in the midst of its worst economic times since the Depression. And he says, I want to propose that we replace our current museum with a approximately $40 million facility.
When the price of oil and gas dropped dramatically, as it did in the early 1980s, that had a devastating effect on the state budget. So education was slashed, health care, transportations, corrections, every facet was undergoing tremendous cuts in terms of services and delivery of services. And there we were sitting in Dr. Morris's office listening to grand ideas of millions and millions of dollars that would be necessary. And as much as we all were in agreement with his vision and belief of the need, the reality was it was going to be very difficult to come up with that kind of money. We were able to pass a law that changed the name of the facility from the Stovall Museum to the Oklahoma Museum of Natural History. That did a number of things. It made it a statewide museum with a statewide mission and purpose. And it really set the stage, we thought, for later on, should funds be available, that it would be something that wouldn't be just exclusively Norman's Museum or the University of Oklahoma's museum, but all of Oklahoma's natural history would be preserved and shared.
That book sparked a lot of interest among the people of Oklahoma, so much so that a couple of citizens groups here in Norman began working toward a bond election.
We came up with Heritage at Risk as a name for the organization. We went to the Medieval Fair and other places, and the basic thing that Heritage at Risk did was educate not just Norman people, but people from around the state. I think we were a pretty ragtag, maybe not all that impressive looking a group, you know, to pin your hopes on.
When the citizens group brought forward a petition that said we want to put on the ballot an election to tax ourselves to help the possibility of this museum being built, well, the early estimates of building this museum were $30 to $35 million. This particular funding for Norman was, I mean, I'm not even sure I know where the $5 million number came up, but that was the number that was on the table. It's like, well, if Norman could put in $5 million, then the state of Oklahoma would be willing to include the museum in a statewide bond election for $15 million. And then that's 20, and the rest would have to be raised privately.
There were often troubling times when we would be flatly told that there's no way in hell that you'll ever raise that money. When the people in town banded together and went around with those petitions and got people signing them at fairs and malls and birthday parties and all these places, it really was uplifting. It said there's a sense of community here that won't be beaten.
The university wasn't in favor of doing this at the time, and I was asked to stop the people from going door to door and to stop the election, and I explained that I wasn't a member of those groups. There was nothing I could do. That's just the way democracy worked. How can you be against your own heritage? I mean, it's right there with mom and apple pie as far as I was concerned, and nobody's against those things.
The museum was the wrong building for the wrong purpose at the wrong time in the wrong location. It's a financial disaster for the state of Oklahoma, for the University of Oklahoma, for the citizens of Norman. Any way you look at it, a financial disaster.
Of all the thousands of people that were supportive of this museum and project, when you really take something to the public like this, that even though it has such merit, I think in today's political environment, there are going to be naysayers and those that are against it. Surprisingly to me, there was very little.
Met very little opposition, and I don't recall the numbers exactly, but it was a 60 or 70% positive vote on the day. So that was a wonderful event, and everybody was so excited, and we just thought, wow, we've really done a wonderful, marvelous thing. And about a week later, we had a meeting with Carolyn Thompson and Cal Hobson, the legislators that were so involved, and they said, well, that's really great. Now we have to go past this $300 million statewide bond issue that has the museum's $15 million in it. And we kind of went, oh. So, after climbing that mountain and being successful there, then we realized that, well, that was just the beginning, and we had to then turn around and work on the statewide bond issue.
State question.
649 and 650. Which will raise $350 million, mostly for capital improvements at our state's public universities. The money will be raised from bingo cards and pull tab lotteries. If passed, one of the most dramatic improvements will be the construction of the new Museum of Natural History building in Norman. Currently, millions of dollars worth of irreplaceable artifacts are being stored in inadequate facilities.
Dinosaur heritage is warehoused. That's over 50,000 fossils. Only a few are actually displayed inside the current tiny Oklahoma Museum of Natural History in Norman, which brings us to a good point. Public and private volunteers have been raising funds to build a new world-class natural history.
The decision is up to Oklahoma voters next Tuesday. Heidi Hart, Oklahoma News Report.
Oklahomans voted in favor of the 1992 statewide higher education bond issue, securing $15 million for the museum. Previously influenced by the immensity of public support for the Norman bond issue, the university's viewpoint had changed, and the administration now supported the director's efforts to protect the collections. With the public funds in place, Dr. Morris and the University of Oklahoma Office of Development took on the enormous task of raising the private funds necessary to begin the project. As the fundraising campaign progressed, the desire of Oklahomans to protect their heritage was expressed by the overwhelming generosity of donations made by individuals and corporations from around the state.
Our board was starting to give some thought as to how we might remember Sam and how we might recognize his service. So it just all came together. The foundation was looking for a way to remember Sam. The university was wanting to build a world-class museum of natural history, and there had always been a relationship between the Noble Foundation and the university, and those two interests came together. It was just eureka at the right time in the right place, and that was the largest grant we'd ever made.
So the Oklahoma Museum of Natural History would become the Sam Noble Oklahoma Museum of Natural History. David Boren had arrived as university president in 1995, and he loved this project. We had raised the money that was required, and he was anxious to get the project going. We knew that a project of this size would take 3 years or more to build, and so we moved as quickly as possible toward groundbreaking.
This is an event of national and international significance because the people of Oklahoma, the people of our state, the university community, and many others, the city, we have joined together to create on this location what will be the largest natural history museum of its kind, associated and co-located with the university anywhere in the world, and the finest of its kind as well. I am particularly pleased at this time to present to us a traditional Native American blessing so appropriate for our undertaking today. Mr. Gus Palmer Sr. of the Black Legging Society. Vested in me by the Board of Regents, I now instruct that the remainder of the construction commence. All right.